As Africa's leading defense news portal, Defence Web aims to give you the latest updates on African defense, the South African National Defence Force, and the defense industry. Hi folks, welcome to the Defence Web News. In African defense news, Mali's armed forces are receiving 53 vehicles from Algeria. The United States donates trucks to Niger's military. The United States and Rwanda strengthen defense ties. South Africa is still silent on military aid for Mozambique. South Africans were apparently part of an aborted mercenary assault on Tripoli. And the South African Police Service and Johannesburg Metro Police see drones in their future. In SANDF news, an expert asks if armed soldiers should enforce a national state of disaster. Soldiers receive shotgun training for crowd control. Salvage work is underway on the Hercules C-130BZ 403. A soldier has been caught with a cigarette consignment. Budget cuts mean South Africa is losing its sovereign capability and defense industry, and SANDF salaries are flagged as irregular expenditure by the Auditor-General. And in company news, Simphiwe Hamilton departs as AMD Executive Director. Milkor launches a medical ventilator, and Paramount provides food relief to Ghana, Zambia, and Mozambique in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. In African defense news, Mali's armed forces, FAMA, have received the first batch of 53 vehicles donated by Algeria to bolster Mali's efforts in fighting Islamists in the Sahel. The first tranche of vehicles, comprising logistics, combat, ambulance, and troop transports, was handed over on the 27th of May at President Modibo Keita International Airport in the capital Bamako by Algerian Ambassador Balaim Chabihi. According to Major General Ibrahim Diriho Dembele, Mali's Minister of Defense and Veterans Affairs, the donation will strengthen Mali's armed forces in its efforts to fight against terrorism and violent extremism. The United States has donated 10 trucks to the Nigerian armed forces in support of the G5 Sahel Joint Force combating terrorism in the region. The 10 Mercedes Atego trucks were handed over on the 27th of May by US Ambassador Eric Whitaker. The trucks, worth some $1 million, can transport up to 15 soldiers through the roughest terrain, the US Embassy said. Also handed over was a logistics warehouse valued at $430,000. It will provide 300 square meters of safe storage for valuable spare parts for the Nigerian Armed Forces vehicles, including the 60 Mamba armored vehicles that the United States provided for Nigeria's units in the G5 Sahel Joint Force. Rwanda and the United States signed the Status of Forces Agreement, SOFA, that will strengthen the existing military cooperation between the United States and Rwanda, the Rwandan government has announced. The signing ceremony was held on the 28th of May at the office of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in Kimihurura. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Dr. Vincent Baruta, who signed the agreement on behalf of Rwanda, noted that the new agreement is broader than the existing one. 11 South Africans were reportedly a group of private military contractors who self-evacuated from war-torn Libya to Malta, with some apparently preparing to operate helicopters in the North African country. This is according to a United Nations report, as well as information from Valletta-based Malta Today's. According to these and other reports, 20 contractors were recruited to fight with forces loyal to Khalifa Haftar, the military strongman running a large part of Libya from Benghazi. Over a year ago, he mounted an assault on Tripoli, hoping to take the national capital from the government of the National Accord under the leadership of Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj. The planned assault ended acrimoniously, with the contractors opting to board rigid-hulled inflatable boats and transit the Mediterranean to Malta, where they were arrested and released. This is after a fine was paid by the company which chartered the boats. The New York Times said UN investigators determined the contractors would be paid $18 million for their part in aiding Haftar to take the Libyan capital. 6 helicopters, 3 SA-314 Gazelles, and 3 AS-332 Super Pumas, sourced in South Africa, apparently earmarked for the Tripoli assault, were reportedly flown to North Africa from Botswana while the personnel arrived in Libya from a staging area in Jordan. The helicopters were to be armed with 7.62mm medium machine guns. According to Scramble magazine, the 6 helicopters were procured from South Africa in June 2019 through 2 United Arab Emirates companies, transported by flatbed trucks to Botswana and subsequently to Benghazi. The abortive mercenary expedition last summer was organized and financed by a network of secretive companies in the United Arab Emirates, according to a confidential report submitted to the UN Security Council in February. The companies are controlled or part-owned by Christian Durant, an Australian businessman and former fighter pilot, who is a close associate of Eric Prince, America's most famous mercenary entrepreneur. The South African development community, SADC, in May urged its members to support Mozambique in efforts to overcome terrorists and armed groups in Cabo Delgado. South Africa, by way of Defence and Military Veterans Minister Simphiwe Hamilton, was at the beginning of June neither confirming or denying it would provide military assistance to its eastern neighbour. During a meeting of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans, PCDMV, she is reported to have said deployment of South African Special Forces to Mozambique will only be discussed behind closed doors. According to News 24, Mapisa Ngakula confirmed there are challenges with Mozambique. Whether Mozambique asks for help is another matter. News agency reports in May have South Africa International Relations and Cooperation Minister Naledi Pandor saying her country was in talks with Mozambique about assistance. In a webinar under the theme Use of Drones in Public Order Policing, representatives from the South African Police Service SAPS and Johannesburg Metro Police Department JMPD stated that unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs or drones, will be used in the future for law enforcement, public safety and disaster management. The DroneCon webinar, held on the 20th of May, was hosted by David Lakorta, Director of Auxiliary and Security Services at the JMPD, and centered around uses for drones, the best drones to use, and ethics in law enforcement, public safety and disaster management. Lakorta and Brigadier Simon Mahlangu, SAPS Airwing, SAPS Airwing, both said the SAPS intends to use UAVs for a more investigative role, while the JMPD sees drones as a useful tool in crowd monitoring and car accidents. Lakorta opened the webinar with an overview of the JMPD during the COVID-19 lockdown and the opportunities they have to work with drones. The JMPD has 7,540 police officers with specialized units that utilize 1,400 vehicles within the 1.6 billion square meter metropolitan area of Johannesburg. Lakorta suggested many opportunities where drones can and will be used by JMPD, such as monitoring marches, stadiums, university protests, and demonstrations, and added, "We will be using drones on our highways, monitoring accidents as well as land invasion. As you can see now, because of COVID-19, we have recently experienced a lot of people taking land without actual approval." Lakorta went on to say that the JMPD sees drones as our future in law enforcement enhancement. And in SANDF news, successive budget cuts are causing the South African National Defence Force to lose its capabilities and are also threatening South Africa's defence industry, a parliamentary committee has heard. On the 27th of May, the Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans was briefed by the Department of Defence, DoD. It heard that the SANDF has been in a critical decline since the last defence review, drafted in 2012 and approved in 2015. The review then described the SANDF as being characterized by force imbalance, unaffordability of the main operating systems, inability to meet current standing defence commitments, and the lack of critical mobility. Defence and Military Veterans Minister Masiviwe Mapisa-Ngakula said that budget shortfalls have hit her department hard. At present, the SANDF has only been provided with 63% of the funding needed to meet its requirements. We are therefore in the dilemma of lacking financial resources for the mandates of the defence function, as per the 2015 Defence Review. The DoD said a major challenge it faces is a decline in the ability to maintain equipment with stock levels inadequate to support current defence commitments. A reduction in the training budget has seen training cut back significantly, with capabilities not at the required level of combat readiness. The committee heard that the SANDF faces equipment obsolescence, with the Army especially hit hard, with little prospect of modernisation. Other issues include facilities degrading due to a lack of funding, affecting combat readiness, and old and obsolete information and communication technology facilities, leaving the SANDF vulnerable to cyber threats. Just how low national defence expenditure has sunk on government's priority list is illustrated in part by a DoD presentation to Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans. Compensation of employees, as government report writers and the bureaucracy term salaries and wages, is an ongoing concern in Minister Simphiwe Hamilton's department. It has reached a stage where Auditor-General Kimi Makwetu has flagged compensation of employees as irregular expenditure for the South African military. The DoD presentation for the fourth and final quarter of the 2019-2020 year under review has it that planning was for an average personnel strength of 74,901 at a cost of 31.89 billion rand. A final letter of allocation from National Treasury gives the compensation of employees allocation as 29.2 billion rand, 2.7 billion rand less than what the DoD asked for to pay uniformed and civilian personnel in the last 12-month period. While alarmist cries of tanks in the townships at commencement of the coronavirus lockdown never materialized, questions are still asked about armed soldiers enforcing its numerous regulations, some now declared unconstitutional. Respected defense analyst Helmut Heitmann rightly points out South Africa is not under a state of emergency. It is a presidentially declared state of national disaster, and the question has to be asked, why are soldiers patrolling with R4 assault rifles? The soldiers' primary effort should be to persuade people to abide by the restrictions, not force them to do so at gunpoint. Heitmann said, "Personally, I would not want them to go unarmed. Given how violent townships can be, and perhaps that most soldiers are not properly trained with handguns, the infantry should at least be trained on shotguns and anti-riot ammunition, and some on the 37mm riot gun. Why not issue those with one or two designated marksmen carrying R4s?" he asks, answering in part, "There are insufficient shotguns." An option might be riot batons, with the shotgun and R4 armed troops providing protection if needed. Further commitment to crowd control comes from Youngsfield Military Base, where soldiers from 10th SA Infantry Battalion underwent a 4-day shotgun training refresher course. Infantry soldiers from the bulk of the SA Army's current deployment, Operation Nortella, assisting in efforts to mitigate the spread of coronavirus. Their department is part of the presidentially decreed state of national disaster, which eased to level 3 at the start of June after more than 60 days of strict lockdown, including a nighttime curfew and ban on the sale of alcohol and tobacco products. SA National Defence Force social media has it that the shotgun refresher course for Charlie Company soldiers from the Mafeking-based units at the Western Cape Military Base is in line with soldiers having to use firearms to prevent violent crimes such as assault, malicious damage to property, arson and murder. Actions are taken not to kill, but to stop what is happening. SA Air Force technical personnel are stripping usable components from C-130BZ, tail number 403, next to the runway at Goma Airport in the Democratic Republic of Congo after it was damaged during an accident at the beginning of the year. The 28 Squadron medium-lift aircraft was left languishing with structural and engine damage after it hit a culvert a short distance from the runway in January. Initial efforts at recovering usable parts from the 4-engine transporter were hampered by United Nations bureaucracy. Additionally, the departure of the South African Air Force technical team was put on hold due to the coronavirus pandemic halting air transport and travel. Those obstacles no longer exist, and social media postings show technicians stripping instrumentation and other usable parts. The lure of what appeared to be easy money ended badly for a soldier caught with a consignment of apparently illegal cigarettes in Limpopo at the end of May. Making matters worse for the as yet unnamed soldier, identified only as a non-commissioned officer whose unit is not disclosed, is that he was transporting his apparently illegal goods with a military vehicle. The Directorate Corporate Communications of the SA National Defence Force said the soldier was arrested by military police in Shegeso outside Polokwane on Sunday, 31st of May. Military police, following up on a tip-off about a military vehicle suspected of carrying illegal cigarettes, traced and arrested a suspect. An investigation is underway, and its findings will form the basis of charges against the NCO, non-commissioned officer, a statement said, without indicating if the suspect was in custody. And in company news, Simphiwe Hamilton, Executive Director of the South African Aerospace, Maritime and Defence Industries Association, AMD, has stepped down after 13 years at the helm of the organization. He is being replaced by Sandile Ndlovu, the current CEO of the AMD Export Council, from the 1st of July. The AMD board on the 29th of May said that Hamilton had been instrumental in driving the success and sustainability of the South African defence industry since he joined the association in 2007, serving as executive director for the last 13 years. South African defense company Milkor, in response to the local and international need to assist in the efforts to combat the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, has designed and manufactured a standalone medical ventilator for emergency use. Milkor has also developed a continuous positive airway pressure ventilator (CPAP) machine, which was originally designed by Mercedes F1. The CPAP machine can be used in conjunction with Milkor's non-invasive ventilation solution, which comprises a helmet-based ventilation system. Paramount Group has provided food relief to the embassies of Ghana, Mozambique, and Zambia as part of its efforts to support South Africa and sub-Saharan African countries affected by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The food donations have been slated for onward distribution from each embassy to the respective Ghanaian, Mozambican, and Zambian communities in country to those struggling and presently stranded in South Africa, Paramount said on the 29th of May. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, our daily and weekly newsletter, and our other social media platforms if you enjoyed the webcast. Leave your comments below. Thank you for watching. Stay safe during the lockdown, and we'll see you next week.